Hey, welcome to What You Doin' with Brandon Horwin
and Sophie Williams. And today's special guest is...
Hi, my name is Florence Lacey. Everybody calls me Flo, so please call me Flo. I've been an actress for over 50 years, mostly in musical theater. I've done a few straight plays, but mostly musical theater on Broadway and on tour and around the world and in regional theater. And so I've had a lengthy career.
Excellent. Well, we are excited to have you on today here on What You Doin', and thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. I've been looking forward to it.
So, Flo, can you tell us a little bit about your journey to, theater and performing? You and I chatted when we signed on how you were a drama major first, so I can assume that that's infused somewhere into your journey. So just a little bit about your start and sort of how you, followed your road to performing, which led to a really great career.
Well, I can go all the way back to high school. That's where I was sort of bitten by the bug. I'm sure a lot of us sort of have that story. But I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. And so my girlfriend and I decided to audition for the spring musical so that we could meet guys. And that's kind of how my first experience in theater began. And then I really fell in love with the art form and what it is and the collaboration of it and the fun of it and the adventure of it. And I seem to have a natural talent. So I wanted to study acting. I kept my singing kind of a secret for a long time. I studied with a private teacher, but no one at Point Park College, it was Point Park College then, now it's Point Park University in Pittsburgh. And it was a wonderful program because it was connected to the Pittsburgh Playhouse, which was an equity repertory house. So I got to work with professional actors from New York right from the get-go in college. And I think that was an invaluable experience. Got to know some of the ins and outs of what it's really like to compete in the theater. And yeah, it was a nice start. Then after college, I went to New York. I did an off-Broadway show that lasted one night. It was called Sweet Feet. And yeah, that was an eye-opening experience. So I decided that I had friends living in California and it might be easier to be poor in California. So I moved to LA and I didn't work for a couple of years. It was really hard. I was, struggling, as most young performers starting out really do. But I did have my AFTRA card and I did have my equity card. So I was considered a professional actor and got those kinds of auditions. Finally, I got lucky. I landed a job. It was a tour of John Brown's Body. And it's the Stephen Vincent Benet poem that's backed up by an a cappella chorus. And it was directed by John Houseman. And it starred Rock Hudson and Leif Erikson and Claire Trevor. And during that little tour, I had a beautiful solo. And so I kind of got some attention. And Rock Hudson and I became very good friends. So when we went back to LA, he invited me to his house for dinner one night. And during the evening, he had a guy playing the piano and Rock asked me to sing. And so I went up to the piano and I asked this guy if he knew Can't Help Loving That Man from Showboat. And he said, yeah, he knew that. He asked me what key I did it in. I said, I don't know, just play it, I'll sing it. So I did. And then Rock said to me, hey, Flo, do you know a Jerry Herman song? And I said, well, I know Ribbons Down My Back from Hello, Dolly. And I looked at the piano player and I said, do you know that song? Because to me, it was a little bit obscure. And he said, oh, yeah, I know it. And what key do you do it in? I said, I don't know. Just play it. I'll sing it. And when I finished, the crowd in Rock's living room went crazy. I thought, what is going on? Then Rock Hudson walked up to the piano and said, Flo, I want you to meet your accompanist. This is Jerry Herman, who composed Dolly. And Mame at that time, and Mac and Mabel. And Jerry said to me, if I had a show running on Broadway, you'd be in it tomorrow night. And I thought, oh boy. He said, I will remember you. And I thought he was kidding. But 6 months later, he called me out in LA and he said, I want you to come to New York. I want you to make your Broadway debut in a revival of Hello, Dolly. I want you to play Irene Malloy and sing Ribbons Down My Back. So that was my big Broadway break. And that's how my career really got started.
That's great. Well, on that same subject, you're very well known for your role as Irene Malloy. So, from, the initial revival you were in to then the revival you were in 95, did you think that that role would have such, such an impact on your life and such an impact on just the theater community in general? And how do you think that has kind of grown from the two revivals you've done?
Well, when I look back on it, no, I'm sure at the time I didn't really realize how important, first of all, Jerry Herman was going to be to my life and my career, because he brought me to New York in such a visible way. I mean, when I made my very first entrance on Broadway on opening night, I got applause. Now, it wasn't for me. Nobody knew who the hell I was. It was for the costume and the character that was already well known. So because I got my start like that and did, several shows with Jerry Herman and tours with Jerry. And yeah, I don't think I realized at the time, but certainly looking back, it's like, man, he was so very important to me and to what happened to me afterwards.
Yeah. So do you think from the two times that you've performed the role, anything changed for you? Or, did certain opinions you had about the character, did they affirm what you had?
Well, I got a whole lot older between those two performances. So yes, I would say I matured a lot, I'm sure. I was very, very green at the beginning and very naive about the theater at the beginning. And certainly by the time I finished playing Irene Malloy, I had grown up a lot.
Yeah.
Found out what touring was all about and found out what working on Broadway and how satisfying and exciting it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for your both runs in Hello Dolly, you had an incredible team to collaborate with. Obviously, at the helm was Jerry Herman, at the helm of the incredible score and you've shared that great story with us. But how was it working with Carol Channing, this larger than life figure that everybody adores, but being her collaborator and working side by side to create this show, this beloved show that you're bringing back to audiences twice?
Yeah, well, it was an interesting experience. Carol was not an easy person, and so it was an interesting experience. That's sort of all I can say about it. It taught me a lot about stars and how both temperamental and selfish they can be, and how delighted audiences don't maybe always know what's going on backstage and so forth. So it was a big eye-opener for me working with her.
Mm-hmm.
So then you went on to play some more iconic roles, including Evita as well as Fantine in Les Mis, both beloved shows and scores and everything in between. So, what was it like for you crafting some of these roles in these beloved shows, and what did it do for your career then going forward?
Well, Evita was, of course, the biggest role I ever played. And I played that role for 12 years all around the world. So working with Hal Prince and Larry Fuller was an amazing experience. I mean, just wonderful. It's probably the most demanding role that has ever been written for a woman in musical theater. So the discipline of it was educational and tough. really tough. But I got to see the world. I got to make money, doing what I really, really love to do. So I look back on the Evita days as truly probably my happiest times in the theater. It was really fun being the star.
Now, over the course of your career, you've stepped into some of your roles as a replacement. How did you find your work preparing for a role different as a replacement? Did it make anything more challenging? Did it make it more rewarding in any way?
Yeah, it was especially Fantine was difficult because so many of us stepped into that role. And unfortunately, we didn't really get to work with directors. We were working more with stage managers and so forth. And so the collaboration didn't feel the same. Some people who are stage managers and putting replacements in, they're in love with someone else's performance. So they don't really see the value in your performance. And that was very challenging, very difficult. Although I must say, working on Les Mis was really fun because it felt so much like an ensemble piece, coming from playing Evita, which was so much on my shoulders, to play Fantine, and it just was fun. It was really fun once I settled into the role. I played it for about 6 months.
I was going to ask, how long were you in? I mean, somebody like Ed had such a long, extended period of time. So it's just interesting to hear the variance in how long each person spent with, Les Mis.
Yeah, I was in Les Mis for about 6 months. Yeah, and it was truly one of my happiest Broadway experiences. It was because it was just fun. It was just, a fun group of people.
Did you feel a sense from the audience that the energy that was being put forth for Les Mis, this, sort of another beloved piece, but it was taking the New York and then eventually the world by storm? Did you feel any different energy from the audience being in Les Mis during your time, or not? Not really.
I would say I felt more audience differences and so forth doing Evita, because I played it on Broadway, but I was touring with it for many, many years and all around the world. And so first I toured in the United States, and it was a very new show then. And then I toured in Canada, and then going to Europe, the Europeans really treated Evita like an opera. So the very first performance that I did was in Zurich, Switzerland. And it was at the Zurich Opera House, which was a gorgeous facility. And the audience went so crazy. I had 13 curtain calls my first night. 13 curtains. That just never happened in the United States, I can tell you that, or Canada. But in Europe, Evita was looked at in a different way, and so treated like an opera. It was wonderful.
Yeah, so just kind of switching subjects a little bit. You starred in the Kennedy Center production of Sondheim's Follies in 2011, and then moved that performance to Broadway also in the same year. So this was a really esteemed and very highly anticipated show. So can you talk a bit to the process of moving it from like a regional place as the Kennedy Center then to a Broadway stage? And did anything change in that process?
It was really an exciting time. No, I can't say things really changed, because the Kennedy Center is a very, very high quality regional theater. I mean, I sort of think of it as another Broadway house.
Yes.
It's so big, and it's so well attended, and it's so supported. And yeah, and it was a thrilling time because I was understudying. I was in the production every night, but I was understudying Bernadette Peters and Elaine Page.
Wow.
Understudying both roles. So I never left the theater. I should have just had the bed there, because I was constantly rehearsing and constantly preparing. And I did, once we got to the Broadway company, I was doing the same thing. And I actually got to go on for Elaine, I think 10 times. So I got to sing I'm Still Here. Now, Follies means so much to me because it was the first show I ever saw on Broadway. And that,
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
yes, I saw the original cast and the original production of Follies. And then it's now the last Broadway show I will probably ever do. And so it was such a beautiful full circle for me, and getting to sing I'm Still Here was overwhelming.
Yeah, definitely.
But the production values and everything were very, very similar,
Mhm.
moving from the Kennedy Center to a Broadway house. It was, yeah, our dressing rooms were a little smaller on Broadway, yeah, a little more cramped backstage, but
Yeah,
other
so
than
you have done like a fair amount of really awesome regional work. You've done Nevermore at Signature Theater Company, Saving Amy, which was also regional. You did the Sunday in the Park with George production for the Sondheim Festival, as well as many other regional productions. So my question, I guess, would be like, do you prefer it almost? Because it seems you have a very impressive regional resume. And
yes,
what's the main difference for you?
I love regional theater. I absolutely love it. I mean, when I first started out, as I was telling Brandon before we began, I studied drama. I kept my singing a real secret. And so my real dream was to be a regional theater actress. That's what I wanted. So as my career was winding down from Broadway, I was spending much more time in regional theater and just absolutely loving it. My time at the Signature Theater, my time at the Creative Cauldron were some of the happiest times. Also here in Connecticut, I live in Connecticut, and I worked at Connecticut Rep too, which was just wonderful to actually be able to live at home and work in a regional theater was a dream come true. So yeah, regional theater is truly my favorite. And part of it is because of the audiences. Part of it has to do with the regional audiences supporting their artists and treasuring their artists. Broadway, it's a big business. It's a very big business, and touring is the same. But regional theaters just have a more homey feel, a more community feeling, and that comes from the audience.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely agree. So you've spoken a bit about your, relationship with Jerry Herman. So, and you were also featured in an evening with Jerry Herman. So how did you kind of take your expertise of him and his compositions into your performance?
Well, he really trusted me with his songs. He honestly did, and I love that. I mean, I've always felt that singing a song is like doing a great Shakespeare soliloquy. It has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has to have an arc that makes sense. It has to have emotional commitment. And so taking his songs out of the context of their play and just performing them with Jerry Herman at the piano, I mean, what more fun can there be? And he really trusted both me and Leroy Reams to interpret his songs. And, for me, that's the greatest compliment, when the composer really trusts the singer, trusts the actress to do what she's supposed to do with the song, take it where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Staying on the subject of regional theater, singling out one of your performances fairly recently was in Sunset Boulevard, also featuring our good friend Ed Dixon, and you were Norma Desmond. So, another iconic, big role for a musical theater actress. So, what was it like crafting this specifically for the Signature stage? As we've mentioned with Signature here on this show before, it's really committed to artistic excellence for a smaller scale, and they do some incredible work there. So what was it like creating that show for that specific space and theater company? And personally, how was this show for you as an artist?
Very challenging. It's a really hard role, and it has such a degree of broadness to the characterization. So, I worked on it for a solid year, just the music, just to feel that I would be comfortable enough to begin in a regional theater, because boy, rehearsal time is short, and putting something like that together is really hard. And the subtlety that I had to bring that character down to, because the audience was 6 feet away, it's it was very, very tough. But I thought Eric Schaefer did a masterful job, not only in directing the piece, not only in directing the actors, but in the design of the set, the use of the space, the use of lighting, the use of where the orchestra was. I mean, just all of those details were so well done at Signature. I was extremely proud of that production.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's interesting that you mentioned, just for our audiences, can you go over the scope of, rehearsal time and preparation time and creation time for a show like Sunset Boulevard at Signature Theater, the time frame we're looking at versus Broadway, just so they understand how short of a time frame it really is to create something just as, large and exciting?
Well, in Broadway, you get like a month or two of rehearsal in a studio, and then you get previews, or maybe even an out of town, where you take the piece out of town and you work on it and you change things, and before you even bring it into New York and face a preview audience, and changes are still happening. So that can be many, many months of preparation, creativity, and just rehearsal, just getting it all perfect. With regional theater, you're very lucky if you get a month, and that includes your previews. That includes the technical rehearsals, where all you're doing is standing for hours while they focus a light. Yeah, it can be very grueling. So I felt with Sunset Boulevard, I felt like I had to have the lyrics under my belt, so that when I was faced with another actor, I would be able to feel confident to interact with them without searching for words like I'm doing now. We got a month, and that included technical rehearsal. So very, very short time. And in that time, you have to learn all the dancing, you have to learn all the music, all the spoken words, all the staging, all the costume changes, all of the details that on a Broadway production, you'd have months to work out.
Yeah, that's amazing, because, we've talked about so much regional theater and so many, regional theater specific productions on our show throughout these episodes. And it's amazing, so many remarkable performances have taken place, on regional stages that were such a specific short time of rehearsal and preparation, and a very specific short time of performances. So they were there and then they weren't, but they happen. And it's interesting and really fascinating to reflect on them here and hear the other side, the creative process of it taking place.
Yeah, when I was still in college, my summers were spent doing summer stock, of course, at a small theater in the Pittsburgh area called Odd Chair Playhouse. And it really prepared me for the eventual regional theater work I do, because we only had a week or two to put each production together. And that was extremely hard. I didn't do a lot of big musicals at the Odd Chair Playhouse, but plays and comedies and things like that. But it still really, really was a good education.
Yeah, so, we've mentioned Jerry Herman. I can imagine he would fit in this question, but who is someone that has greatly inspired your professional career throughout your time?
Well, I have to say that Stephen Sondheim's music has certainly done that. I've only worked with Stephen Sondheim personally just a little bit. So I want to mention his name just because every piece of music he's written certainly has inspired me. Even just to listen to it is a step. But probably the person who gave me the most was Eric Schaefer. Eric Schaefer was the region. I mean, I did Broadway shows with him too, but the regional theater work we did together at Signature was so creative, so trusting. When you can trust a director, when you feel that a director trusts what you're bringing to the table, working with Eric was the most fun I've ever had. And he did make theater fun for me again. Maybe after all the touring and after all of the Broadway stuff, I needed that reminder that I started in this to meet guys. I started in this for fun in high school. And it became fun again working with Eric.
Yeah, we've had a lot of, especially DC regional actors that we know who've come on the show, and they always end up talking about like, well, it's fun. I continue to do it in DC because it's fun and I'm with my friends and it's like we're all putting on shows together and it's not like I'm working. It's, it's more because I enjoy my work that I keep doing it, not because I need to keep doing it. So that's interesting that you say that. Well, Flo, we talked about so much today, so many stories from your career, so many people you've known. Is there a particular experience that we haven't touched on, or maybe a story we haven't touched on that you'd like to share with us today?
I can't think of anything. I've told you all my stories. Well, the one we haven't talked about, the Grand Tour. Now that was a musical that Jerry Herman wrote for me. I starred opposite Joel Grey, and it was a short Broadway run, a short run after in San Francisco, in Chicago. But it was a wonderful experience because it was the one Broadway show that I originated the role for. I wasn't a replacement. I wasn't filling in someone else's shoes. The shoes were created for me. And so I'm very excited every time I hear part of that score. I so wish that other regional theaters would look at the Grand Tour because it's a beautiful score. It's a wonderful story. It's based on an old play called Yakubovsky and the Colonel, which is a World War II story. It's a touching, beautiful piece that nobody does anymore. So rarely do I hear about it being attempted. And that was really one of my most fun experiences, was originating a role on Broadway.
Yeah.
Before we close out, I wanted to ask, you were a part, and we touched on this, but you were a part of the iconic Sondheim Festival at the Kennedy Center, and we've heard great stories about it on here. Larry Blank and several others were a part of that. But looking back on that had to be one of the most iconic festivals of performances to ever happen at the Kennedy Center stages, and it will remain like that. So how do you look back on your time being a part of that and a part of that legacy for the history of musical theater?
That was a wild ride. We jokingly called it Camp Sondheim because we were all like we were at summer camp, and it was brutal hot and it was hard work, but oh my goodness, the fun. I mean, just being with all these interesting people. I mean, Stephen Sondheim was around all the time, and sometimes he would walk into rehearsal and say the dark cloud has arrived because he can bring a dark cloud to the rehearsal room if he's not happy with what you're doing. But it was truly one of the most exciting adventures, and anybody who was a part of it thinks back on it with so much excitement still. It was such an ambitious project, but we all feel very rewarded with getting to be a part of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's such an important piece of, history from a musical theater performance standpoint, what everybody, accomplished in, but also from sort of a technical administrative standpoint. I was in a theater production class junior year of college, and I had a textbook by Michael Kaiser, who at the time stepped in to run the place to try to bring it back, up to its fullest potential. And they really, credit that Sondheim Festival as being a big part of the revitalization of the Kennedy Center from a more, business sort of company, aspect of it. So it's just interesting to hear, both sides and the great importance of what it did.
That's very true. I mean, when Eric Schaefer first spoke to me about doing Sunday in the Park with George, I said, well, first of all, it's my favorite Sondheim musical. So the answer is yes. I don't even care what role you want me to play, but that all of those wonderful pieces by that, our Mozart, the greatest composer of our time, to have them all right there at the Kennedy Center like that, and have that community step up and just celebrate it so fully. It was just very, very rewarding.
Absolutely. Well, that's a perfect note to end on. Sophie, can you think of anything else that we left out about Flo's amazing, inspiring career?
No, Flo, I think you did a great job. We got it all in.
Oh, good. I hope so.
Well, congratulations on everything you've accomplished. It's amazing for us students to look at a career like this, and it's inspiring. So thank you for sharing it with us today and joining us, and we really enjoyed this conversation. Is there anything we could promote on here for you coming up, or anything that you would like to mention before we close out?
Well, I know you're never supposed to retire from show business, but I am retired.
Well, congratulations on that. Now it's time to, enjoy without the thought of when is the next rehearsal or when is the next audition.
Exactly. I've spent my life building my retirement time, and here it is, and I'm loving every minute of it.
Well, that's great. If you ever want to come to the warm weather or anything, I'll be in Florida, so you're more than welcome.
Thank you, Brandon. Thanks so much. It was lovely talking with you both.
You too. Thanks so much, and let's stay in touch, and hopefully we can see you in person at some point sometime soon.
That would be great.
Thank you so much again. This was really fun. We appreciate it.
You're most welcome. Bye, Sophie.
Bye. It was nice meeting you.
Nice meeting you, honey. Bye-bye.